LEGO created DC fans. The influence they have on younger builders cannot be underestimated, but I theorize that LEGO isn't quite aware of that influence, or at least in the capacity you would expect them to, and what they're capable of with the brands they partner with. There was a time where LEGO made things in a very specific way, a time where the licensed sets were not all just about movie tie-ins, and for lack of a better term, nostalgia baiting. It was a time where licensed themes were still being made like LEGO's in-house themes, that I'd wager made them easier for builders to get into, building as they began to branch out and innovate, all before placing the right bets on what I'd say were the wrong pieces of media. Since then, it feels like LEGO has lost sight of what made licensed themes like LEGO DC as appealing and successful as they were. We'll have to rewind things to make that point here. It's 2006 and LEGO is on their high from the success of products tied to the Star Wars prequel trilogy. Now, in a world with no sequel plans for Star Wars and Harry Potter still running its course, what potential partner would be next for LEGO? Hot off the heels of the return of The Dark Knight to the big screen with Batman Begins, Batman was catapulted to the forefront of the superhero discussion. With the prior Marvel films in the niche of superhero movies at the time not taking themselves as seriously, this refreshing take was taking the world by storm. Of course, the smart decision was to start merchandising off the relevant Caped Crusader, and so the LEGO Batman theme was born. This was a period where LEGO's action-oriented sets were all relatively cut from the same cloth. The focus was LEGO versions of iconic vehicles and locations across their licensed sets, with a design language that carried over from the wondrous and often unique sets they developed for their in-house action themes. LEGO Batman was, by far, the license to most exemplify this. Batman is a self-made hero, and when it comes to toys, it only makes sense that he would have tons of wacky vehicles and gadgets to get the job done. LEGO did this in the only way they knew, and it was a hit! What people were getting was an action theme familiar to them, but featuring Batman and his extensive rogues gallery. Because of this familiarity, one could easily assume that it made the sets of this theme more accessible. Interesting as that is, what's more interesting is that despite the new films certainly inspiring LEGO to hop on the Batman train, LEGO's sets were not based off of the new movies at the time, or at least not yet anyway. What the Batman theme was is something far too few themes these days would dare to do. It was LEGO's take on Batman, not Batman made into LEGO. This means that stuff that only LEGO would do was present, and that was part of what made it so accessible and familiar to the LEGO builder. Of course, LEGO would still need reference material to work with, and what we ended up getting were a bunch of designs based off of the extremely popular Batman the Animated Series. LEGO's designs and part limitations at the time did very little to hide that clear inspiration, not that it needed to, and because of that, people began to delve into the media that inspired the LEGO sets. You had kids watching Batman the Animated Series, and in turn learning even more about Batman, his allies, and his foes. With a story that enriching and smart, there was no way it didn't inspire children to learn even more beyond the show, even to the point of learning about the grander selection of stories and characters across all of the DC franchises beyond it. In my personal experience, I was shown the Tim Burton and Michael Schumacher movies around this time, as these LEGO sets had that much of an effect on my brother and I. Pretty soon we were watching the classic Superman movies while eating dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets after school, and even binge-watching Linda Carter's Wonder Woman show with our mother over one summer who, as it turned out, was a fan of a lot of superheroes growing up as well. I'm living proof that, because of LEGO Batman's efforts being in line with the other LEGO sets I had enjoyed at the time, I was made more aware of a broader and far richer multiverse of DC Comics stories. The LEGO product came first, and then the stories that inspired it second. I want to make that very clear. I was now a fan of DC Comics superheroes, and it wasn't because I had watched a cool movie and then got invested in the toys. I got invested in the toys enough to start watching the cool content that inspired it, and I know I'm not the only one. Heck, I'd even make the claim that this wasn't the strongest instance of this. As the LEGO Batman theme success continued, LEGO's efforts into gaming had also hit its stride with the revolutionary release of LEGO Star Wars the video game, its sequel, and the Lucasfilm-mandated spin-off into LEGO Indiana Jones the video game. So, with LEGO Batman's success, might as well make a video game, right? LEGO Batman the video game released in 2008 with the exact same intentions the LEGO sets had. A completely original idea, with LEGO as the medium, rather than an adaptation of a story remade with LEGO. A first for TT Games, the game's developers, and it proved very fruitful. During this time frame, the Xbox 360 was at its all-time peak, what with the advent of online multiplayer in the way we know today, and all younger people wanting to get into it. As typically happens at this point in a video game console's lifespan, bundles were being made where you get the console with some games for an affordable price, and the kid-friendly option was packed with LEGO Batman the video game. This was also a period of time where the Wii was also in its heyday, and with just how many people were adopting that console, for those who wanted a Batman video game, the LEGO Batman video game was there. To say all of this effort was effective is an understatement. Akin to how Wii Sports is one of the most sold video games period, having been packed with every single Nintendo Wii, LEGO Batman the video game also saw incredible success akin to this thanks to that Xbox bundle, and just how many people adopted all these consoles in the first place. At one point, LEGO Batman the video game had managed a Guinness World Record for the best-selling superhero game, which was acknowledged in 2014. Though it certainly doesn't hold that award today, that success cannot be understated. This game was in so many people's households, and it showed. To this day, it is TT Games' most successful LEGO game. This was yet another instance where the LEGO product came first, and the interest in the stories that inspired it second for so many people. Because this game existed, people were exploring the DC Comics stories, and it was all due to offering it in a welcoming and exciting way. Though that's not to say Batman's relevance at the time didn't continue to strengthen, and get even more people enthusiastic about what DC Comics had to offer. The Dark Knight trilogy continued throughout these years, and the Arkham franchise of Batman video games was in full swing. People had options to get involved in the brand, and the LEGO sets only heightened that. At the time The Dark Knight came out, LEGO Batman saw its first direct tie-in sets. Only one set could be considered tied to it, albeit loosely, despite all the sets launching alongside it sharing the same branding, which was a common practice at the time. Even then, the set tied to the movie had a certain level of charm that LEGO sets typically had at the time. The design ideals of something toy-first or toy-ready, something referred to as a design that is toyetic, something good as a toy. What's also of note is that it was at this time that LEGO began to see a profit after many years trying to dig itself out of bankruptcy. Right at the time LEGO Batman was seeing such success. It could just be a coincidence, but it's also interesting that that was the case. It's at this point that the Batman IP as a LEGO theme took a short hiatus, eventually being reborn as LEGO DC Superheroes, a broadened outlook of the DC storylines releasing within the same year as LEGO Marvel Superheroes, creating the general LEGO Superheroes theme. It was both sub-themes' intention to involve designs much like they did with the original LEGO Batman theme. LEGO versions of superheroes, but rather than omitting doing the opposite, of superheroes made into LEGO, they were also making sets directly tied to the many movies releasing in the 2010s. However, they never fell fully into the mindset of relying on these films to sell sets, at least not at this point. The majority of what LEGO was releasing were all original concepts, but this time it wasn't just Batman. Although he was certainly leading the way, Batman would often be partnered with other heroes across the DC Elseworlds. None of it was ever truly intentional or referential to any specific story, although certain character designs were deliberate in order to make something recognizable for the dedicated fan. This was also around the time the LEGO Batman 2 DC Superheroes game released. It released on all platforms the original one did, as well as the new ones at the time, broadening its scope while not leaving the platforms the original one was so successful on behind, and by proxy their adopters. In its success, it was eventually adapted into a direct-to-DVD film using cutscenes from the game to tell the same story, with some additional animation to make things make sense. A third game eventually released, LEGO Batman 3 Beyond Gotham, and for the first time ever saw a set directly based off it released as well. Clearly the games were some of the most successful media LEGO had going for it, so much so that TT Games was eventually acquired by the owners of DC Comics, Warner Brothers. At this point, the first generation of LEGO Batman fans were becoming teenagers, and the movies began to entice them further into appreciating the overall DC universe. When LEGO branched out to DC superheroes in general, it's very clear that this enticed so many of the teenagers at the time to stay on board and collect the characters they had always wanted when they were younger. All the while, the new theme was harboring new fans all the same, but this time introducing these new builders to the broader cast of DC superheroes from the get-go. There was no wading through Batman-related media first to find out more. They knew who was who and wanted to learn more, going straight to the right sources for them to do that. With the turn to internet use growing stronger leading into this period of time, grassroots content became the groundwork to larger online fandoms, and this couldn't be more true for LEGO. While LEGO Star Wars had its army base builders, LEGO Superheroes had their stop-motion artists, and even today some of these artists see incredible acclaim. The avant-garde nature of these fan-made animations were just at the right time, as the internet was fully invested in that type of content from both children and teenagers alike, across most fandoms in general. This kept the common transitioning out of appreciating LEGO at bay from so many LEGO fans at the time. Ask your local adult fan of LEGO DC and they'll very likely tell you that they never fell out of the fandom thanks to the culture the theme had built and continued to develop online around the world. The hope was that official tie-in media would also help bolster that, as LEGO began to put more effort into making sets directly based off of movies at the time. LEGO Marvel Superheroes opened up with that effort, so it only made sense DC would try it too. While all ages were watching these movies, unlike how the Marvel movies were promoted, the DC movies tended to lean towards older audiences, and over time one can see a very sharp decline in quantity of LEGO's tie-in products for DC superheroes because of it. In fact, some of the movie's subject matter became so intense that LEGO didn't want to make any direct tie-in products. The original Suicide Squad movie was probably the most interesting one in this case, as LEGO did make minifigures that were very obviously inspired by the characters from these movies. The difference was that the sets were in that area of being LEGO versions inspired by DC Comics things, rather than DC Comics stories as a LEGO set. It was still running with that very LEGO-inspired design language of their in-house themes, and the love for what the LEGO DC Superheroes team was delivering on was obvious. In fact, fans generally refer to this time as when LEGO DC Superheroes was at its absolute best. It only made sense that the year following would bring the LEGO Batman movie to the world. However, despite the sets for the movie all being original, many have the opinion that they did not quite have the same charm that the standard LEGO DC Superhero sets did, rather that most fans felt like they were their own thing. At this point, LEGO DC Superheroes had so many options from so many different avenues and sources that one could argue that there was almost too much to keep track of. This while Marvel was reaching the climax of the very focused and fan-acclaimed first saga of the MCU. When the MCU started to really hit its stride, and with the success of its merchandise, it became very clear on the LEGO front for fans that the quantity of sets releasing for LEGO DC was even further declining. And original sets under the Marvel superhero sub-theme were also growing few in number, if they weren't specifically based off Spider-Man. You see, LEGO Marvel and LEGO DC share the same budget, as they're both sub-themes of the LEGO superheroes theme in general. If one is seeing more success than the other, the more successful sub-theme will get more of the budget, and get more sets because of it. This just specifying a very common business practice with LEGO. This reflects the success of the movies the LEGO sets were based off at the time. Because of that, LEGO began to really hammer in the need to have direct movie tie-in products, something that can be easily promoted just by the IP holder having a new movie out. This meant more sets based off DC's movies, meaning DC Comics stuff made into LEGO sets, rather than the LEGO interpretations of DC Comics that made the IP so popular with LEGO fans in the first place. As time went on, things would narrow down to just the basic needs of Batman, and maybe a tie-in set or two. Come the COVID-19 pandemic, and the complete overhaul of society's spending habits for a time, LEGO took a very sharp pivot towards getting the adult collector involved. From here on, the focus of LEGO DC became nostalgia products, no matter if the age range on the box was for kids or for adults. If it was for kids, it was based off of a classic Batman vehicle variant from when their parents were kids, and if it was for adults, it was something designed to be as much of a collector's piece as possible. This way, both types of sets would be enticing to the adult builder who were really heavy spenders during this period. The only exception to this was the sets based off Matt Reeves' The Batman. Now, I don't recall if this was ever confirmed or if speculation just ran rampant, but if you recall the original release date for that movie, these sets would have likely been developed back when LEGO was still doing movie tie-in sets alongside their own sets based off the IP. With the film's delayed release, that left the sets for this movie pushed out to launch alongside it, no matter how far in the future it would be, eventually releasing after LEGO's sharp pivoting to collector's items. And now, gone are the days where truly any LEGO license theme feels like LEGO's renditions of the license, going for the idea of the license as LEGO sets instead. For some themes, this makes sense with how iconic scenes and vehicles are, but with something like DC Superheroes where locations aren't as familiar to some people, and where so few characters have vehicles in the first place, leaving Batmans to fill in the gaps with as many scales and variations of Batmobiles and Batcaves, LEGO DC has become a shadow of its former self. I think we can all agree that you can only have so many Batmobiles released on a yearly basis before things feel stale for all audiences. 18+ sets can't carry it either, as the market can only afford so many high-priced sets. The 4+ sets do still exist, but the DC ones are some of the most obvious examples of the simplicity of that age range. It makes perfect sense that they're simple, but you aren't going to get much of anyone older than that partaking in them. Coming to this realization, it occurred to me that it was LEGO doing their renditions of DC superheroes that made the line as successful and as iconic as it was. This coming from someone who still enjoys what we've been getting from the sub-theme nonetheless. Back then, not only was LEGO creating their own versions of these characters, but also their own all-ages narratives for anyone to hop into as a starting point. LEGO is so intent on waiting for movie releases to promote their products for them now. The only problem is that, since they came to this conclusion, plenty of DC movies have released, and they did nothing for them. I would make the assumption that it was a lack of faith in these movies. And while that is an assumption, going off that, why not release LEGO sets inspired by these movies, like they did successfully with the original Suicide Squad movie in the meantime? Batman has always been the safest bet, and I can't argue against that. It's like I established before. With him being a self-made hero, you can give him all the vehicles and gadgets in the world. He's toy ready, and there's no denying that. Similarly, waiting to cross-promote with movies is also a very safe thing for a toy company to do. Arguably, the movie serves as the only marketing that toys would ever need. It's cost-effective, but that of course depends on a movie's success, and I'd wager that LEGO's standards for that has only increased as the years have gone on. As it would turn out, they're doing neither of those things now. And based on everything we've gathered here, it's very clear that DC, as a LEGO product, is at its most relevant when LEGO is making sets that are from the imaginative minds of its designers, rather than waiting for movie products and their unreliable release dates and age ratings to cross-promote things and tie them to. Today, the kids who got into LEGO Batman in 2006 are adults now. The kids who got into LEGO DC superheroes are late teenagers and adults as well. Most of these adults are still getting to a point where they can have a steady wage, so most can't afford the 18+ sets, even the ones under $100. Older adults can, and it's no wonder all the 18+ sets are meant to specifically count on the older generation's nostalgia. Even the very few sets for younger builders do the same, counting on the adults to dip into them as well. Sets that those younger builders would have no connection to, having not seen the older movies as a pre-established entry point, and not having an all-ages DC Comics story to get into. Just the recognition of Batman, and the fact that pretty much all of these sets are called the Batmobile, and that being all they really have, which I'm sure works to some degree. That adult market narrows by the day as those generations age, and if the upcoming kids have no exposure to DC Comics befitting of their age, considering the 4+ sets are perhaps too simple to get those kids engaged for long, who's gonna buy LEGO DC sets? Media has their audience, but as this age of digital books and content streaming becomes so compartmentalized into platform exclusivity, limiting reach by there being too many options, and subscription prices rapidly increasing, the chances of getting this younger audience involved is rapidly waning, unless the adults in their lives happen to have already subscribed to these offerings to introduce them, or are enthusiastic fans themselves. Even then, anything DC Comics tends to be on the most premium platforms, or on platforms that have ads that no one wants their children to view these days. In time, who will there be if no one fosters these kids on DC superhero stories in the first place? Something all ages to get them engaged, as these movies tend to be too dark to cater to all audiences who could be interested especially, and with no guarantee that anything coming in the future would stray away from that. What they need is something wholesome, and something that they can build upon endlessly to get them engaged in the narratives of DC Comics. Something that embraces the childlike wonder in a method that is pure and engaging. That entry point would need to have influence, and I can't think of a more influential toy company than LEGO. At one point, LEGO proved just that, on their own, with no direct outside influence aside from having the license. Just inspirations pushing the LEGO Batman name to such acclaim that it got people of all ages into DC Comics. LEGO created DC fans, not just for LEGO's product, but for DC as a whole. This history has proven that. And I firmly believe that if LEGO wants to see a successful DC superheroes again, they're probably going to have to do it themselves. And if anything from LEGO City, LEGO Friends, LEGO Creator, LEGO Ninjago, and even LEGO Monkey Kid have proven, if they make that jump and take that risk, a risk far less frightening than I'd imagine their corporate bodies believe it to be, and I mean that positively, if it even captures just a sample of the essence the original LEGO Batman theme had, we could see a LEGO action theme like we have never seen before. Something so imaginative and incredible that it could create a similar foundation as the decades before, but at the grand scale of modern LEGO themes today. And I wouldn't want to have it any other way. Let me know what you missed from LEGO's line of DC sets in the comments below after you like the video and subscribe. Check out some other videos of mine on the end screen. I'm Pen, and I'll see you next time.